Today on the Metal Roofing channel, we are talking about metal shingles versus exposed fastener or through fastener metal roofing. What's up, guys? Welcome to the Metal Roofing channel and welcome to Q&A Mondays. Subscribe here if you're new. We produce new architectural metal content every Monday and Wednesday. Love to have you join the conversation. All the questions that we are going to be talking about today are in the description below. And we've got our friend Todd Miller from Isaiah Industries. Todd, thanks so much for being back on the channel today.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. So today we're talking about exposed fastener metal roofing versus metal shingles. So first of all, why don't we talk about the obvious part, the difference in the look between an exposed fastener metal roof and metal shingles?
You know, metal shingles, again, and we've touched on this before, but they are available in a variety of looks. So we can have metal shingles that look like asphalt, that look like wood, that look like slate, look like tile, look like I said, wood shake. And so we're keeping a very traditional look to that home. Switching a home to through fasten, and we see that happening in a lot of areas, in particular down south and in other areas, we see a lot of that. But it is a pretty dramatic change to the aesthetics of that home. So you've taken that house from a traditional shingle look to it to something that, you know, has these vertical panels and all these little screw heads dotting the roof. You know, very similar to what they are also seeing on pole barns and storage units and things like that, but adopting that technology over to residences. And so what we hear from homeowners a lot is, you know, Todd, I'm interested in a metal roof, but gosh, some of these products I see, I don't like the look of them. Help me understand all of this. Help me understand what's available out there. And a lot of times that homeowner, a metal shingle type product is very appealing to them.
So talk to me about the differences in how a metal shingle would perform versus an exposed fastener system. We've talked about this exposed fastener versus standing seam as well, but tell me what the difference is between metal shingles and exposed fastener.
So the obvious difference, of course, is with exposed fastener, you've got all the exposed screws and all the holes that are caused by those screws. And even beyond that, the problem is you're dealing with these long sheets of metal that have a natural rate of expansion and contraction with temperature change. And when you've got those exposed fasteners and the metal is trying to move, it has no place to go. So, of course, what happens over time is it's pulling against the fasteners, and sometimes the fasteners loosen up, sometimes the fasteners flat out break, sometimes the hole that the fastener made through the metal wallows out, and then water starts to seep in, and, of course, the whole fastener has this little rubber grommet on it that is supposed to keep water out, but if they haven't gotten that screw exactly square in, or if over time that starts to wear out and the rubber starts to break down, then you start to get water seeping in as well. And so the metal shingles, on the other hand, for the most part, are all designed with concealed fasteners. They also, through interlocks and clip systems, they have allowance for that thermal movement of the metal, so that you don't have these exposed screws that are just sitting there slowly breaking down and beginning to let water seep into the house.
Yeah, and one of the other nice things is, you know, on an exposed fastener roof, you typically don't want to go over 25 feet. As Todd talked about the expansion contraction, you can, but then you're going to be lapping panels, and that's just another opportunity for water intrusion into the metal roof system, where this is going to allow for proper thermal expansion and contraction. You're not having to worry about the fastener withdrawal. And then when you talk about just general maintenance, when you do have fastener withdrawal on a exposed fastener metal roof, you got to get somebody up there to clean it up. And they're usually, it's not just putting the fastener back in, because you'll have one season of expansion and contraction, it's going to come out. So it's usually replacing the fasteners, you know, with a fatter shank fastener, so then it holds on. And then you go through the next cycle of expansion and contraction as it starts to pull out or withdraw. You could be up against having to change that out to a fatter shank, or ultimately replace the roof if there's no such shank that can replace that final one.
So it sounds like the inherent maintenance over time is greater with an exposed fastener system.
I remember I was so amazed a few years ago when it occurred to me that there is this whole industry out there of ever increasing diameter screws strictly to retrofit these roofs and try to alleviate this problem. So a couple of weeks ago, I had a homeowner, actually a contractor contacted me, and a homeowner had an exposed fastener roof, and they had some major problems. The roof was 15 years old. And so they had called me to come in and take a look at it and help them analyze it. And it was really interesting. I mean, first of all, what I found was exactly what we're talking about. Lots and lots of the fasteners had loosened up. You could see where a few years ago someone had gone up there and put big globs of silicone on over several of the fasteners because they couldn't get them to hold in and they need to keep water out of them. And, at this point, literally, you could stand on a ladder and lift up about the bottom 3 feet of those panels. The fasteners were absolutely doing nothing on the bottom edge of that roof.
Wow.
And, what happened in this particular situation was actually even more tragic than that. And like I've mentioned, I always like looking at houses very holistically. I mean, what works, what's best for this house? And in this particular case, it was a log-style home, log siding. And they had a very complex roof line and all these individual attics with knee walls and very poor ventilation in the attic due to the design of the home, okay? Wasn't anybody's fault other than, I guess, maybe the architects. But what had happened over time is as these screws had leaked and let water seep into that attic, that moisture then was not getting vented out. So then it increased and caused condensation in the attic. So now they literally had an attic full of mold.
Wow.
And just a very, very bad situation. I mean, $350,000 house, 15 years old. And, the homeowners looked at me and said, do you think we just need to tear it down? I mean, that was what they were seriously contemplating. And honestly, that may be their best choice. I hope it's not.
Yeah.
I hope we can find a better solution than that. But it's not going to be a cheap solution because now they have all this mold, all their decking is rotted, all the insulation has gotten water soaked and needs to be replaced. So it's a lot of work to be done there. And, again, not going to say that an exposed fastener roof can't work on some residences, and we do see it out there. But you've got to look at every house on its own merit and its own individual basis to determine what the right roof is. And there are projects out there that metal shingles aren't the right roof for either. And that's kind of what I'm a real zealot for, is making sure that the right product is used for the right application.
Yeah, absolutely. So when we were talking about the look before, obviously metal shingles can have a variety of different looks and styles and coatings, but what about the actual coating system? How is that different from an exposed fastener?
Sure. So what you'll usually find in the metal shingle world is almost all of the coatings used are PVDF coatings.
Okay.
And PVDF coatings, of course, are known for their fade and their chalk resistance and their ultimate durability. If you go out and ask anyone in the paint industry, really, is there anything even on the horizon that looks better to us than PVDF? And they'll always say, no, it's as good as it gets at this point. And tremendous finishes. I mean, we started using the PVDFs back in the early 90s and have never regretted it. I mean, just made a huge change in the performance of metal roofs. So when you get into through fastened products, a lot of times those products really have been designed for the agricultural market, which typically has very different goals than someone does with their home. And so a lot of times they are using lower cost, lower performance paint finishes on those products in order to hit certain price points, again, driven by the agricultural market, the self-storage building market, where those panels are used a great deal.
Yeah, and when you talk about the performance of the paint, they say, well, I have an equal length warranty with my face fastened system as I do with this PVDF system. I think really what you got to look at is the fine print. That warranty is traditionally warranted for film adhesion or paint adhesion to that panel. So when you look at it and you look at the fade and the chalk characteristics of a PVDF versus a silicon modified polyester or an SMP, traditionally, the PVDF has a much longer performance life cycle for chalk and fade, and so that's what you're going to want on on something like this that has some contrast to it that looks and mimics an actual shingle.
You get into commercial properties, and they typically figure based upon ownership changes of a commercial property, a metal roof probably will be repainted every 10 to 12 years because someone else bought the building and they want a different look.
Yeah.
You get into agricultural buildings, almost all of their buildings are constructed usually on a 15-year life basis is what, obviously, a lot of folks keep them longer than that, but that's kind of what they plan on amortizing things over. And so, different goals than what homeowners have, where they need that durability and that system that is going to continue to look good and have value there when they go to sell the home or maybe leave the home to their next generation.
Yeah, absolutely true. And if you have any more questions about the differences between PVDF and other paint systems like SMP, we do have other content about that. You can check that out as well. So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about energy efficiency. Tell me the difference between metal shingles and a through fastener system when it comes to the efficiency.
Very interesting question. So over the years, we've had a lot of energy efficiency testing done, both at Florida Solar Energy Center, which is down at Cape Canaveral, and also at Oak Ridge National Laboratories in Tennessee. And we had some study done in, I think it was 2001, and they took one of our metal shingles in a brown color. It was reflective pigment, but this was very early generation reflective pigment. We had about 17% reflectivity on that particular coating. And we tested that, and they basically had a test cell where they had a building set up and these lanes set up with different roofing materials, and they would measure the attic temperature underneath of it. So they compared the brown metal shingle to white vertical seam panel, such as a through fasten type panel. And white, of course, has a natural reflectivity of 65%, regardless.
Right.
That's what it is. And so we had much lower reflectivity. We were actually keeping the attic a little over 4 degrees cooler on the metal shingle side than we were on the vertical seam side. And of course, the reason is the air gap underneath these panels. So on a metal shingle, even the very low profile ones, you actually have very little contact between the metal and the roof deck. Most of it is a dead airspace. Well, that dead airspace acts as a thermal break. Very similar if you've ever seen demos of double pane window. So you've got double pane glass, 2 panes of glass, very, very small space in between them, but yet one single pane glass lets heat right through it, double pane glass doesn't. It's because of that dead airspace. So we, in essence, do that up on the roof with the metal shingles by creating that dead airspace. Helps to keep the attic even cooler, which in turn, of course, reduces air conditioning loads. Quality standing seam systems, many of those have figured out how to have clips and things that lift that metal slightly up off the roof deck to accomplish the same thing. But on a through fasten exposed fastener product, you're either installing it flat to the deck or you're going up on purlins. Going up on purlins makes the roof hard to walk. It makes it more prone to wind problems. It means you got to raise your gutters. The roof may be up into your dormer windows. All kinds of reasons why purlins are not good on most residential roofs. But yet that metal, through fastened metal panel sitting right on the roof deck is going to transmit heat right into the attic.
Well, thanks for joining us here on the Metal Roofing Channel. I think we covered a lot about exposed fastener versus metal shingles. Todd, thank you again. Your knowledge is greatly appreciated for sure. If you have any questions, please comment down below. We'd love to answer them. Subscribe here to the Metal Roofing Channel. As always, I'm Thad Barnett. We'll catch you next time.